Welcome to another episode of The Heart of the Matter. Today we're talking about the child and sex. And with me to share so many valuable, a lot of valuable information with you is Pastor Praise Fowowe. Pastor Praise, you're welcome to The Heart of the Matter.
It's nice being here, sir.
You know, there's so many things that parents don't really realize that are happening with children. And Pastor Praise is going to help share a lot of the things that are going on, sometimes under our very noses, that we don't really realize. Pastor Praise, you are a coach, a mentor to children. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how come you found yourself doing what you do.
Okay, I was sexually abused at the age of 4. For like 4 years by some, ladies who came to live with us. And then from ages 4 to 8, I continued from ages 8 to 12, being passed from one older person to another. At 12, I totally lost control of my sexuality. At 14, I started smoking, drinking, and added several other things to it. Sex was an everyday thing. Then along the line, I got into the university, and then I was told, okay, if someone came to preach Christ to me, and said, if you give your life to Christ, everything is going to be all right. So I said, okay, I accepted Christ, but in like 2 months, I noticed the difference. That where I was coming from, the world, people could talk about sex, but in the Christian faith, they don't talk about it, But I saw a lot of people who made in the club, see them in church, and, and I knew something was wrong here. So I joined the activity group. I became very committed, and I was in a department. Then when I was in 300 level, it was time to change leadership in my fellowship on campus, and I knew I was going to become the music director. But there were 82 sisters in choir, and I was still struggling. So for the first time, I took responsibilities, and I said, God, I was going to start waiting on the Lord. And for 18 days, I was waiting. On the 18th day, the Lord just said to me, as in it was casual, he just said, go to your fellowship and share with them what you've been doing. And I said, I don't have a testimony. What would I go and share? So share what you've been doing. And I went and I spoke about my life, my struggles and everything. And the moment I spoke about it, I just realized I became very light and I became very free. From that moment, I started helping people. I was studying accounting, but I knew I was going to practice. So I started working with young people who were battling with their sexuality, because what the Lord said to me is, with the comfort I've comforted you, comfort others. So I don't want any young person to go through what I went through, and that was how I found myself in what I do right now.
Okay, so now you deal with a lot of young people.
Yes.
And you hear a lot of things.
A lot.
Now the Bible teaches us to train up a child in the way that he should go. Are parents actually training their children to handle sexuality?
They're not. Unfortunately, they're not, because sex is a taboo in a lot of homes. Our parents never taught us anything about sex. We're raising children and we are not teaching them anything because we don't also know what to teach. A lot of parents are not good role models to their children to start with. So even when they say they are born again, their children see them being born again in church. When they get home, they become something else. So they can't reconcile the Christian faith that they profess, with the reality that they live with. So a lot of children don't have the moral, authority to speak to their children about this. Take for instance, if a father whose daughter caught him sleeping with the house girl, how is that person going to tell the girl, don't keep yourself and all those kind of things? So we have all these things, and coupled with the fact that there's no information out there, people don't know, there's a lot of confusion. We talk about everything, both in schools, both in churches and homes. We talk about everything, but we don't talk about the subject of sex. And if there's any subject people need to talk about now in the 21st century, is the subject of sex.
What is the reality? What is the reality?
The reality in Nigeria today is the fact that 6-year-olds are having sex. It's sad, but it's a reality. And it's even gone down. It's just that I've not been able to,
a lot of people say that, can 6-year-olds have sex?
6-year-olds can have sex. In fact, I've met parents who tell me, 6-year-olds cannot have erection. I've spoken to more 6-year-olds in the last 6 months who were having sex than even adults who came to talk to me about their sexuality. Everywhere I go, I take statistics. I get them to write out their struggles. it's so obvious they're having sex. 8-year-olds, are getting into rape, all kinds of things. So the age keeps going down and down and down. Unfortunately, the devil operates by ignorance. It makes us believe all is well. Meanwhile, he operates silently. So a lot of young people are having sex, and it's not even that they're having sex. It's the fact that a lot of preteens in Nigeria today are involved in homosexual behaviors. Boys are, especially in the boarding houses, boys will rape boys, and you mustn't talk about it because the kids will tell you, if I say to the school authority, I'm dead. So that's the reality on ground. They are hooked on pornography that teaches how to practice incest, how to practice bestiality, and that has gone around many of our schools, and parents are clueless.
How did children get into this? Because, if the influences around them are wholesome, how come children got into this type
Well,
of
there are
behavior?
two types of parenting in the 21st century. Unfortunately, most parents don't know. You have the media parent, you have the biological parent. Now, the media parent is powerful. Those of us who grew up in the Nigeria where TV would open at 4 p.m. and close at 12, we can't really appreciate God for what He's done for us.
So what you're saying is that the media are parenting the
Yeah,
children?
their parent. In fact, the media is a more powerful parent than even the biology, because how many minutes do they spend together? Fathers, mothers, they've gone to work, they return very late, their children come back from school, they're hooked on some kinds of program on air that you can't censor, and when you can't censor what your children see online, they will just, because we pick culture from what we see and what we hear. So they see all kinds of new things on air, they hear all kinds of music, they dance to it, and before you know, you are teaching the Bible at home, but they are acting something else. The Bible says when men sleep, the enemy will come and sow tares. Now, a lot of parents are sleeping. Now, many people bring house helps in. Many of the house help, abuse is a cycle. If a child has been sexually abused, most of the time, he grows up to become an adult who molests younger boys, who grow up to molest, and the cycle continues. So you have a situation where they bring in house girls. The house girls begin to interact with the kids who grow up to interact with their younger ones and all those kind of things. Statistics says that more children are molesting children right now. So it's based on interaction, and the world they live in is a sexualized world. You go to schools, children talk about sex. They code it. They don't call it sex. They talk about oral sex. They see it as alternative to intercourse. They code it as well, and because their parents, their children, their colleagues, students travel, they travel, they go out there to the Western world. They see what happens. They interact with children out there. They copy it, they bring it back, and they try to act it out. So every day and every month, there's a new slang, there's a new concept coming in. Like friends with benefits is a major issue among young people right now. Friends with benefits, oral sex, and all those kind of things.
What do you mean by friends with benefits?
Friends with benefits means our parents know us as friends. It's what has replaced platonic friendship right now. When we were growing up, it was platonic friendship, which means there's no string attached. We're just friends. But now, there is no string attached. They are just friends. But the benefit in the friendship is the fact that whenever they feel sexually pressured, they can have sex, and the parents must not know about it. And it's a big virus all over town right now that a lot of young people are hooked on.
Now, we're going to take a little break now. But when we come back, I want to ask, how do you get the children to talk? So stay tuned. We're still talking with Pastor Praise Fowowe. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking about the child and sex education with Pastor Praise Fowowe. Just before we went on the break, I asked a question which he's going to answer now. How, Pastor Praise, do you get children to tell you what's actually happening in their lives? How do you do it?
Well, for me, I have a way with children because I understand a child's psychology. I understand the fact that most parents have not taught their children anything. So that's where I start from. I try to teach them the basic things they want to know. Then once I begin to teach them, they realize that, okay, I can talk to this person. And also because they're not familiar with me. Something tells them, okay, the parents wouldn't know about it. So usually I ask them to write out what they were going through that they wish their parents don't get to know about them without putting their names. Okay, there are ways I can get to find out who has written what if I choose to, but most times I don't bother. And they write stuff. Then eventually I randomly select them to say, okay, if you have something to tell me, can you raise your hand and everything? And they raise their hands, then they begin to talk. However, I think parents need to be more sensitive because I don't have to do it. Parents can do it. And it starts with the level of discussion you have with your child. If you're not saying anything to your child about sex, you can be sure your child is not going to tell you anything about sex. If all you're telling your child is about morality and everything, it will tell you things in that light. And parents can be sensitive. I mean, if you see a child who is extroverted, suddenly becomes withdrawn, don't be excited that the child doesn't give you trouble anymore. You need to probe what has happened. If you see a child who has passed the age of bedwetting, he starts bedwetting again, you need to find out what has happened. If you see a child, who was doing well academically begins to drop, you need to probe. If you see a child who is running away from a particular adult, you need to find out. Don't just insist or command your child to go and visit an uncle or something. If your child is avoiding the uncle, find out. Or your child is rude to someone that is supposed to be older, you need to find out as well. And sometimes it might just be innocent quizzing. Like you're asking a child, has anybody touched you and say, in any part of your body and say, don't tell mommy, don't tell daddy? Because every pedophile and predator will use the line, don't tell mommy, don't tell daddy. Your child in his innocence will talk. Even when they're not talking, you observe their body language, then you know something is happening here. Okay, so those are basic tips that parents can deploy to watch out and discover whether a child has been abused or not. Sometimes for other children it's absent-mindedness or whatever, but once they know that they can trust you, once they know that you're not going to be frightened by anything, sometimes parents, their response is what scares their children. A child tells you something and you are agitated, but you need to calm down, okay, and get to hear more from them. Once you do that, once you understand the psychology of a child, you can get to hear a lot.
How can you be sure that the child is telling the truth?
Well, a child has nothing to gain by lying against a particular adult. They have nothing to gain at all. And that's one of the worries that children have. That because pedophiles and predators are not strangers. They're people well known to you. They're uncles, aunties, domestic servants. The worry of the children is, if I tell my parents, they're going to disbelieve me. They will think I'm joking or because I don't like this person and all this kind of thing. A child has nothing to lie about. That's why I say to people who work with children, that when a child is reporting a particular adult, make sure you record it. Because the first thing a child says to you in most cases is the truth. But between the time they get back home and come back, they can edit the story because they are afraid of what the parents would say and all those kind of things. Parents need to learn to believe their children.
Okay, so how do you what do parents do?
Well, I think the starting point for parents is to empower the child. You can't always be there around your child all the time. But if every home learns to teach the children what they need to know, there's what a child needs to know about sex from 18 months to 3 years. There's what a child needs to know from 3 to 5, 5 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 18. What to teach from January to December of every year. The moment parents learn all those things, and basic ones, and you empower your child, because the strength of the predator against the child is ignorance of a child. The predator knows that you will not teach your child anything about sex. So they just come in and then they touch your child and they say, hey, don't tell mommy, don't tell daddy. Or in situations where your children are asking you certain questions and you are not answering those questions, you find out that the pedophile will take advantage of that vacuum and will molest your child, and your child will keep quiet about it. So parents need to submit themselves to learn basic sexuality education, and because you can't give what you don't have, really. The moment you have it, then very easy to give.
Okay, so are there forums that parents can learn some of these things that they need to teach their children?
Yeah, there are forums they can, we do sensitization basically all the time. There are materials they can get a kit that teaches them how to teach from 18 months to 18 years. For me, it's a passion that, I want everyone, Bible says the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers the sea. I want every home to be able to teach what is right, because it makes me sick every time. Almost every other day I'm hearing another story. I'm hearing another, and many of these cases are preventable if parents have only learned to do what is right at the right time.
Now, 18 months, doesn't that sound rather young for a child to be learning about sex?
There's what is called age-appropriate sexuality education. When parents hear the word sexual education, the antenna comes alive and they think they want to teach their children how to do penetration. No. 18 months, 3 years, you are just teaching my body and I, which is basically teaching the child to identify his body, teaching them to differentiate between public parts and private parts, then teaching them how to protect the private part. Basically, that's all I teach, with storylines and role plays and games. Okay, that's what the child learns at that age. It's not because if the child doesn't know his private part, the predator will molest him. And when the child is trying to report, I mean, a mother was telling me in one of the forum that when she was 5, her uncle began to have sex with her. And she didn't know what penis or vagina was. So she ran to her mother and said, "Uncle is always putting nail in my bum bum." And her mother laughed about it to say, "How can you be? Don't be ridiculous. Your uncle cannot do that." And for 7 years, her uncle molested and raped her. You know, so when you teach, I mean, our mother's response probably would have been different if she had said, "Uncle is always inserting his penis in my vagina." You know, that's why you need to call it by the proper names. So basically, that's what we teach. Before you even teach anything about penetration, sexual infection, that's preteen. You know, basic things you teach my body and I, curiosity and I, awareness and I, values, my friends and I, and all those things. You know, those are the things you cover.
Okay, so those things will help a parent groom their child.
Absolutely. He helps them groom. He hates communication because most parents don't communicate with their children really. What they do is they pass instruction. Don't do this, don't do that, sit down, stand up. They just give instruction. They command. They don't communicate and they don't know the difference. And it's not their fault because their own fathers never communicated with them. Okay, so they don't understand the different types of children that we have. The 4 packages they come in, the communication style for each of the children because they're also different. You know, they don't understand it. So people are parenting by instinct. They don't have any library, they don't have any book, they don't have any material. You know, so at the end of the day, they just compound all the problems.
Now you said that you yourself were abused at the age of 4.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge is that a child that is abused is going to be traumatized.
Absolutely.
Their life probably could never be the same.
Yes.
How do you deal with the victims of sexual abuse and the trauma that they are going to face?
There are 3 victims when a child is abused. The victim himself, the child, the parents themselves are victims. Because what has happened is the real child has been stolen. A new child has been developed. Now they have to battle to recover the stolen child back into the child. Now the 3rd victim are the fosters. Those are the teachers who are also clueless about how to handle that special child. So for the child, depending on the age range, the younger the child is, the easier it is to recover. You know, but once the child is
Why so?
Because, for example, a 2-year or 3-year-old is still doesn't understand so many things. Okay, so they can forget. Their memory is not so strong and so powerful as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. So there are things they will just not remember. Okay, but you know, for the ones who are a bit older, it becomes, you know, traumatic for them. So the parents need to do a lot of work when it comes to schooling them and teaching them the psychology of a child who has been sexually abused. There are tendencies they will experience. The child can begin to have nightmares, they need to understand that. And there are a couple of therapy they need to run from home. For example, what a child is stolen from a child is the innocence and the self-esteem of a child and the confidence that the child has. So they need to give that child confidence. There is what we call play therapy, which they can deploy. You know, just teaching. It's you know, a child who's been sexually abused, if you give him a goal post and say, shoot the ball inside the goal post, most of them can't score because there's no confidence. Even when he can do it, he believes, I can't. So you need to give them the confidence, sometimes by placing candy behind the goalpost to say, okay, if you can, the number of balls you shoot into the goalpost will determine the number of candies you get and all those kind of things. So you need to build the confidence of that child back. And you as a parent, you don't need to be bitter about what has happened. You also need to calm down and understand, I mean, because some parents even suffer trauma themselves. You know, they are wondering, you know, why is this happening to my child? Why not someone else's child and everything? They need to go through some form of counseling. Then the fosters, the schools, you know, they need to be trained because there are some behavior the child might begin to exhibit. They don't, what the school system now does is when they see that, they don't dig deep to find out why the guy is acting the way he's acting. Now they begin to punish, they begin to suspend. You know, at the end of the day, the guy just feels worthless, that nobody wants to accept me anyway, you know, and that creates a bigger problem. So they also need to understand that the child in your hand is no longer a proper child, is a special child.
Okay. Now, what about in the teens? Because with them, parents may never know what,
Yeah.
what they've been through. What sort of therapies do you have for teenagers who have experienced maybe sodomy in school, or they have actually been the perpetrators of rape on other children?
Yeah. Well, what works the most, and I say this, I'm a professional, I know a lot of therapy, but I tell you, what works the most on any child at all when it comes to recovery is love.
Okay.
And people don't understand how powerful love is. There's nobody can resist love. Once you love people genuinely, you can love them out of their problem. And that's why I say to parents that your children must obey you out of love, not out of fear.
Now, what about our schools? Because we've talked about the home. What role can our schools play? I guess most of us of this generation learned sex education in our biology class.
Yes.
When we were just taught about the birds and the bees, we weren't taught
We were taught
about
biology,
sexuality.
not sexuality.
So what can the schools, what role can the schools play?
The schools need to come to terms with reality on ground. And I said this without any form of apology. The more expensive a school is, the more morally low the school seems to be right now. And it's because the educationists are no longer in the system where we have a businessman, where profit is the bottom line. So they're trying to protect the school fees you're paying. So by trying to protect the school fees, they can afford for you to bring your child late to school. They can afford, your child gets away with several things. Meanwhile, when we were growing up, it wasn't like that. Even though the schools were very cheap, but your teachers will flog you. Right now, we don't have that anymore. They'll say naughty corner, lateness corner, all those kind of things. Now, what the schools need to do is to come to terms with the fact that, yeah, they are teaching academics, but they are not teaching morals. And the school needs to submit themselves. There are a couple of schools that we've assisted to implement basic sexual education as a subject. When what is being taught at home is what the schools are teaching, is what the church is teaching or the mosques are teaching, then we'll have, we'll create a society where evil will not thrive.
We could go on for another hour, but unfortunately we've got limited time. So it's really been wonderful and enlightening having you talk to us about this. Viewers, if you do need to get in touch with Pastor Praise, his contact details are on the screen. I'm sure he'll be happy to help where he can. We'll be back again with another episode of The Heart Matter, same time next week. Until then, stay blessed.